I'm Dr. Minerva Santos, and welcome to Your Health Today. My guest today is Dr. Steve Cowan, who is a pediatrician, but more importantly, he is a specialist in Chinese herbs. And Chinese medicine, more Chinese medicine than Chinese herbs. Chinese medicine has been around longer than man at this point, and it's very fascinating to me because the whole theory on Chinese medicine is very different than the way we look at medicine.
That's true.
And I had mentioned I'm doing this course with Dr. Andrew Weil, this fellowship, and we're learning Chinese medicine, and I'm intrigued. So I'm really glad that you're here because I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
The first question is, tell me, how did you get involved with Chinese medicine?
Well, Chinese medicine was a revelation to me. I was always interested in Chinese poetry and Chinese philosophy all through college and even when I was younger. But I was the medical director of the Asthmatic Children's Foundation before I started my pediatric practice with Larry Baskind. And there we took the sickest kids out of New York City, poor kids who were living their lives in ICUs and emergency rooms, and they really were steroid dependent and on massive amount of medication. And we brought them up to Westchester, to a small facility that was part of St. Mary's Rehab Hospital. And I got to live with them, basically. And so we fed them good food, and I took them on hikes. And I had been doing some breathing exercises that were part of a tradition of Chinese medicine. And so I said, well, let me try them out on these kids, since I had them as a captive audience. And that's a big step for a doctor to take a personal practice and take it out into his patients. I didn't realize what a big step that would be, because within a month of doing these exercises and living in this environment, they were off all their medication. Now that was shocking, because I wasn't taught that in medical school.
Right.
I wasn't taught that in residency, that someone who was steroid dependent could be off all their medication. That's a revelation. So that made me start studying this as a potential treatment. I was a little angry that that had been kept from me, that here was this whole world of medicine that hadn't been talked about in my training. And so that allowed me to pursue that. And then later, when Larry and I started the practice, we both got very interested in herbal medicine. We studied with Andrea Candy a little bit, who you should have on the show as well. She's a master herbalist, and Chinese medicine became my...
She just emailed me.
She became... Chinese medicine became my passion, mainly because Chinese medicine has a worldview that we are just a microcosm of the world, that you are the sky and the earth and the soil, and that your gut is like working the soil, and what you put into the soil is going to determine what you can grow and what gets absorbed. And it has this poetry to it that called a system of correspondences, that each organ has a relationship with the world around it, not the way we think about it in the West. And I think one of the things that's burning out a lot of doctors is that they are like factory workers now. The model of Western medicine is based on what Henry Ford discovered, which was if you do a lot real fast on a conveyor belt, you can put out a decent product. And we use that same model in medicine, particularly HMO medicine. And what ends up happening is you can't survive that, because most doctors go into medicine because they love people and they want to help. And they get into this factory mentality, this assembly line mentality, and you can't survive that. Your heart is not in it anymore. And if your heart's not in it, it's going to reflect on your medicine. So this brought the heart back into medicine for me, especially working with children, because they're like these little plants that you're tending, you know. And if you approach it like a gardener instead of like a mechanic, it's so much more fun. It's so much more fun. You know, one of the saddest things I know, and you may have had this experience too, is getting gastroenterologists to talk about food. They don't talk about food. Isn't that amazing? Think about that for a second.
No, well, you know, I was telling you that I just came from Atlanta and they had this health and nutrition conference. And it was amazing because every speaker basically said the same thing initially, that you learn nothing about nutrition in medical school, and yet now if you look at what we eat, it truly affects our health. The increase in cancer, I'm convinced, is really related not so much to our environment like people like to think, and in some cases, Long Island, et cetera, it is, but a lot of it has to do with the food that we consume, the cows that are loaded with antibiotics and all the other stuff, the steroids, the hormones, everything that we eat is almost poisonous. The additives, I've developed a food additive problem, which
It's very common.
And who knew? But if I eat processed foods, within half an hour, I can't even move my hands. And it took a while because I had seen a bunch of rheumatologists, got diagnosed with an undifferentiated collagen vascular disorder, and take steroids.
Term.
Yeah, fancy term for we don't know what's wrong with you.
Right.
And take steroids, and I was like, no. So I did, rosemary, turmeric, all herbal stuff, until I went on this diet to lose weight, which was the Medifast, which is basically, it's a soy-based protein diet, and it eliminates all processed foods. Within 4 days, I was kind of like, wow, I'm feeling kind of good. Within a week, I was like, uh-oh, there's something in the food that I'm eating that I'm not eating now that's affecting me.
Well, this is, a big topic for me in pediatrics, obviously. You think about when a mother who loves her child starts solids.
Your microphone wire is hanging outside your jacket.
Starts solids.
You're off camera. Straighten it out.
Go ahead.
On or off?
No, go ahead.
So when a mother takes all that care to start the first food, you think about the mindfulness of a mother who's starting food, right? Should I start with sweet potatoes or rice? Or, it's very careful. And then something happens. We forget all that care. But what I always talk about with food is, it is important what we eat, because organic gardening starts inside you. It's not just out in the field. Because we're organic, we are organic. So it's no accident that when you put a lot of chemicals in you and you're organic yourself, you're going to have a reaction. It's pure chemistry. But it's not just what we eat, it's how we eat, our approach to eating, our attitude about eating, how much we eat, when we're full, when we're empty, where we eat. If you're sitting in front of a TV hypnotically, hypnotized, you're not realizing what you're eating. Where we eat, when we eat, the timing of eating is very important for the rhythm of your life. The timing of eating sends a message to your body, to your endocrine system, to your hypothalamus, all these parts of your body that live by rhythms of the world. Eating becomes, an aspect of that. So how, what, where, when, how, and most important, why we eat. We forget why we eat. We're so afraid of being hungry. Hunger is a valuable experience. That's why in every great religion, fasting is a spiritual practice. Hunger in a child is an experience of what empty feels like, so you can appreciate what full feels like. But most of us live our lives half full and half empty, all the time, or full all the time. A lot of us live our lives full because we're so afraid of feeling even the slightest little bit of empty. We can't bear that. And that experience, I tell mothers all the time, it's okay, you don't have to rush to feed him. Let him ask you. Because one of the big questions I get asked, which I consider like a spiritual question, which is, how can I get my kid to eat vegetables? That's a spiritual question. That's, people are asking this all the time to me. It's every single day I get asked that question. The secret of life is eating sleeping, and letting it go.